Are the Boston Bruins peaking too soon? Well, they've been pretty good since the trade deadline, even though it wasn't quite as general manager Don Sweeney and drew it up. Let's discuss on a brand new episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoke to Beat. Today is Monday, March 18th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. It's free and available on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. So please do hit that subscribe button on the audio and video feeds so that you never miss a thing. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. It's chilly up here once again today. The return of the Toques. Thought spring was here, but not quite. And what is heating up is the Boston Bruins. And we're going to talk about how good they've been since the trade deadline here coming up on today's podcast. We're also going to touch on some Charlie Coyle appreciation, Pavel Zacha as well, and take a look at the week ahead. Quick reminder, you can find the podcast at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me at Ian C. McLaren on social media. All right, thank you for bearing with me as I took Friday off here following the win over the Montreal Canadiens on Thursday. The Bruins had a game on Saturday as well. Up and down, back and forth affair over the Philadelphia Flyers. A win, thankfully. And it was March break up here in Canada, so I took Friday off. So thank you for bearing with me through that. Now, the win over Philadelphia featured 2 goals from Charlie Coyle. And he now sits at 23 goals, 54 points for the season. His 2 goals set new career highs, and he's 2 points back of his career high in total points, which was set back in 2016-17. Those 2 goals were, of course, pretty important because the Bruins ended up winning only by a score of 6-5. And you know that I'm a kind of glass half full guy when it comes to the Boston Bruins because, I don't love just focusing on the negatives all the time. And that's how Jim Montgomery was approaching it afterwards as well. He said, it's hard for me to not look at the glass half full. You want to learn these lessons and the desperation of the opposing teams. Schedule is really tough here down the stretch, so the Bruins are going to continue to play teams that are fighting for playoffs or fighting for position in playoffs, which is what they like because they want to be prepared for all these things that are going to happen come playoff time. We know the Bruins have a propensity for giving up leads in the third period, for eventually losing in overtime. The Flyers came pretty close to pulling that off on Saturday, but Charlie Coyle with 2 goals, Danton Heinen with the insurance, and the Bruins eventually got it done. And one of the reasons why the Bruins have succeeded this season is because of the play of Charlie Coyle and Pavel Zacha. And those were questions that lingered even up to the trade deadline. Were the Boston Bruins going to go out and acquire a center? The belief is that they had Linus Ullmark traded to the Los Angeles Kings, perhaps for a center, perhaps Pierre-Luc Dubois. But right now, they're getting fantastic production out of both Pavel Zacha and Charlie Coyle. In fact, they are on track to give the Bruins more offensively than what they got from Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci last season. Now, of course, those guys bring the Stanley Cup experience, elite defensive play, although Zacha and Coyle are pretty good in their own regard in terms of defensive play, but of course not Selke level as Bergeron was. Right now, though, Pavel Zacha has been their most productive player since the All-Star break. The Bruins have played 4 games. He's got 2 goals, 4 assists for 6 points. Charlie Coyle had been a bit quiet offensively, but he's got those 2 goals and another assist for 3 points over the past 4 games. And those 2 guys are huge reasons why the Bruins have been as successful as they have this season and certainly lately. When it comes to scoring, of course, they're led by David Pastrnak with 96 points. Brad Marchand far back in second with 61 points. Coyle, Zacha, 3 and 4 in terms of scoring for the Boston Bruins this season. 54 points for Coyle, which, like I said, is near a career high. And Pavel Zacha has 46 points through 65 games so far this season, which is 11 back of the career high he set last year, albeit still with some time here in order to reach that. I believe he's on pace for 55 points, so pretty close. Those 2 guys are major reasons why the Bruins have been as successful, and I don't think we have given them as much appreciation as they deserve, especially Charlie Coyle, who is, he's not young. He's on the other side of 30, well on the other side of 30. Well, maybe not well, but he's 32 years old, and he is having arguably the best season of his career. He hadn't scored 20 goals. He's only done it once in his career, and that was back in 2015-16 with the Wild. He has only eclipsed 50 points once. That was back in 2016-17 with the Wild. His previous career high with the Bruins was last year, 45 points. Of course, he was playing in a third-line role for his time with Boston. He's emerged as, not an elite top-line center or top-6 center, but very productive for the Boston Bruins, and he is certainly helping bridge the gap between the Bergeron-Krejci era to whatever comes next down the middle, built around Matt Poitras, and if they can acquire a true, elite center, we'll see if they're able to pull that off. But Coyle, Zacha have been excellent down the middle for the Boston Bruins this season. And the Bruins, like I mentioned, are 3-1 since the All-Star break. Part of that is because of those 2 centers, but there's some other guys contributing, and we'll discuss that here as the podcast continues. If you're looking to invest this year, then Robinhood is the place for you. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024 is validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing does involve risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. The 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing, and Robinhood Financial LLC, member ISPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. And as you know, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, Locked On Sports Today. Baseball fans, mark your calendars for March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern for the best MLB season preview coming exclusively to Locked On Sports Today. Find it on March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. So since the All-Star break, the Boston Bruins are now 3-1. That was following the overtime win over Montreal on Thursday, and then the overly unnecessarily thrilling 6-5 win over the Flyers on Saturday. The Bruins had that game in hand. It was 5-2. Philadelphia was able to make a game of it in the third period, but as has not been the case several times this season, the Bruins were able to hang on and take it in regulation time. Now, it was Jake DeBrusk who scored the game winner in overtime in Montreal, and he's been very, very good since the All-Star break. Perhaps it is just having that trade deadline anxiety past him. Perhaps it's just one of his streaks that he's on, but he has been excellent since the All-Star break. In fact, he's got 3 goals, 2 assists for 5 points since the trade deadline, I should say. Second on the team in scoring, tied with David Pastrnak, Brad Marchand, and Hampus Lindholm, who's got 5 assists over his last 4 games as well. I mentioned Zacha leads the team over that time. Lindholm, though, it's very nice to see him because he was much maligned earlier in the season for his play that did not at all resemble what he was able to produce last year. So Jake DeBrusk, 3 goals in the past 4 games to lead the Bruins in that category since the trade deadline. Another guy who was not moved is Linus Ullmark, and the Bruins are perhaps thanking their lucky stars that he did not waive his no-trade clause. Linus Ullmark and Jeremy Swayman have both played in 2 games since the trade deadline. Swayman is 1-1 with an .820 save percentage. Part of that was, of course, the game against Philadelphia where he allowed 5 goals. Linus Ullmark is 2-0 with a .966 save percentage. And whereas, a couple weeks ago, you would have said Swayman is likely your game 1 starter in the playoffs, Linus Ullmark is reasserting himself as that Vezina Trophy winner that you want to have cooking here as the playoffs begin. Now, we might want to see the Bruins continue this rotation here in the playoffs because last year, Jim Montgomery, the Bruins thrived on the rotation in the postseason. They went away from that. In the regular season, they went away from that in the postseason, relied on Linus Ullmark perhaps too much against Florida, and went to Swayman too late in the series. Ullmark started game 5 pretty shaky. They went back to him for game 6. He lost that one. And then the Bruins went to Swayman for game 7. And while that one could have gone either way, you would have liked to have seen them use that rotation throughout the series. That's one of the Boston Bruins' strengths is goaltending. So we'll see if they go with the rotation coming up in the playoffs. That's going to be a big storyline down the stretch, and especially when the postseason hits. Will they rely on one guy, or will they do that rotation? Someone gets the odd games, someone gets the even games. That would be pretty revolutionary in today's NHL. I would like at least they go with Ullmark to start, and then the first sign of trouble or whatever, you go to Swayman. Don't hesitate to make that change because you have 2 bona fide starters on your team. But Ullmark, since not refusing, but choosing not to waive his no trade clause to go to Los Angeles. Reportedly, allegedly, he's been excellent and kind of showing the Bruins that maybe they were making a mistake in trying to trade him. Another guy who's been very good is Andrew Peeke. He's played 2 games for the Boston Bruins so far. He's played over 30 minutes of even strength time. He's been on the ice for 33 attempts for, 27 against. So he's got a 55% shot attempt differential on the ice. Shots, an even 11-11. Goals, he's been on the ice for 2 goals, 1 against, to a 66.67 goals for percentage. Scoring chances, 68% when he's on the ice. High danger chances are 63%. And he has a primary assist as well on a goal scored by Jesper Bokvist in the game against Philadelphia. So the Bruins, while they perhaps erred in trying to trade Linus Ullmark, they seem to have hit so far with Andrew Peeke. Very small sample size, of course. And, there's some questions still about picking up his contract that has 2 seasons remaining on it. But the Bruins seem to have a knack for bringing guys in and getting the best out of them as they fit into the system, into the culture. And Andrew Peeke, very early on, seems to have a look of a guy who could thrive in Jim Montgomery's system. Again, it's very early on, but he looks pretty good so far and could assert himself as the third option on the right side behind Charlie McAvoy and Brandon Carlo, with Kevin Shattenkirk at the moment getting a seat in the press box. I should, of course, mention that, it was on Johnny Beecher's goal that Peeke had the primary assist. It was great to see Beecher get up there and contribute. He made it 4-2. He said he was happy to get on the board, helping the team win in any way that he can. Always feels good to put one in the back of the net. I said all last week that I want to see Beecher up, and I want to see him stay up down the stretch. And he's playing like a guy who wants to remain with the Boston Bruins and who can be a contributing member down the stretch, which we love to see. He's got a 54.6% face-off success rate, which the Bruins need, and had the 1 goal on 2 shots in 19 shifts on Saturday. Please do keep him up. There was one other guy that I wanted to mention. Of course, it was James Van Riemsdyk. The Bruins celebrated his 1,000th game prior to Saturday's tilt with the Flyers, a team that he spent a large chunk of his career with. Van Riemsdyk has kind of gone quiet a little bit offensively, although he still ranks, 6th on the team in scoring with 38 points. But he's in danger, perhaps, of finding his way into the press box with Justin Brazeau, Jesper Bokvist, Johnny Beecher all playing well, and Jacob Lauko bringing some energy as well. Danton Heinen up in the top 6. I made the mistake of dropping him in my fantasy pool in favor of Philip Zadina because he had been hot lately. Sharks have a bunch of games coming up. Heinen scored in his last 2 games. All this to say, the Bruins have some depth up front now. They have some depth on the blue line, and they have been playing very well since the trade deadline. And we'll discuss what they have coming up here as we do our Monday look ahead at this week's schedule. So let's do that here as the podcast continues. The big NCAA tournament is coming up this week, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing with America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. All right, what do the Boston Bruins have going on this week? They are off today. They'll be gathering for practice later on this morning here on Monday. And then they have 3 games on tap this week. They will host the Ottawa Senators on Tuesday. They will host the New York Rangers on Thursday. And then they will travel to Philadelphia to begin a road trip, a 4-game road trip to end the month of March. Actually, it's a 6-game road trip that will carry on into the beginning of April. They'll play Philadelphia Saturday the 23rd at 1 p.m. Then they will travel to Florida for back-to-backs next week against the Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning. They will then travel to Washington and then Nashville and Carolina to finish off that lengthy road trip here as we soon will turn the calendar from March into April. The Bruins only have, let's see, how many games? 17 games left? No, 13 games left. And they are currently tops in the NHL with 95 points. However, they are third when it comes to point percentage because they have played one more game than the New York Rangers and the Florida Panthers, both who are tied with identical 45, 19, and 4 records, 94 points, 691 point percentages. The Bruins are slightly behind at 688. Now, when it comes to regulation wins, that's where the Bruins fall a little bit. They have only 31 regulation wins, which is behind 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams. So they rank 9th in terms of regulation wins. Really boosted, of course, by their loser points. They lead the NHL in overtime losses with 15. They're 40, 14, and 15. So a bunch of teams have more wins, more regulation wins than the Boston Bruins, including Winnipeg, New York, Florida, the Canucks, the Avs, the Hurricanes, Oilers, and the Bruins even trail the Nashville Predators, who are red hot at the moment. So that's what's coming up this week for the Boston Bruins. They'll take on the Ottawa Senators, who are currently 28th. Then they will take on the what was the second team again? The New York Rangers, who are one of the top teams in the NHL. And then they will take on the Philadelphia Flyers once again on Saturday, a rematch of this past Saturday's 6-5 win. So that's what's ahead for the Bruins this week. Tomorrow on the podcast, we'll preview the game against the Senators. We will do our updated cup check. We will, later on this week, do the power rankings. Maybe get a guest or two on the podcast to discuss all things Spoke to Be, because that's what we do here on the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. I hope you are doing well. I hope you are taking care of yourselves, taking care of each other. Thank you for all the kind wishes for my mom's health issues at the moment. And yeah, life isn't easy, but we press on, and I'm thankful that we have this space together to talk about the Boston Bruins, because it's a nice distraction sometimes from the hardships of everyday life, because it is only hockey at the end of the day, and we talk about this team every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Take care, friends, and we'll talk to you again here tomorrow.